Welcome to the So You're Ready to Date podcast. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Angie. And here's where we talk about all things dating, love, and relationships. And most importantly, having fun.
Join us for practical advice for dating successfully on your terms.
Welcome aboard
and enjoy the ride. Welcome to another wonderful episode of So You're Ready to Date, the podcast. We are so happy to have you join us today. And we had a couple of lighthearted episodes, and now we're gonna, I don't want to say take it down a notch. That just got like serious DJ vibes where I'm like, all right, it's been happy and fun. Let's take it a little serious here.
Take it down a notch, go to a slow dance.
So we are going to take it in a kind of serious direction today. We're going to talk about when you know that maybe this isn't the relationship for you, what's next? Because we all have those moments where maybe things are sailing really well and then you hit a couple of hiccups and you're like, yeah, this is not for me. So whether you're in a newish relationship, whether it's slightly a little bit longer, we want to talk about, okay, what are my next steps? What do I do? How do I come out of this experience still excited about potentially dating? You don't have to be ready yet. That's not what we're trying to say, but how can I heal properly from maybe this relationship, use it as a learning experience, and then come out the other side ready to date better, smarter, and empowered. This is all about empowering you to make the best decisions for you and your life and your relationship. So let's get serious here.
I love it. But I think we'll start off with the easiest breakup. However, this is also something that stops a lot of people, I think, from taking that step into the dating world, because you start dating, you go out on a date or two, and he's feeling it, you're not, you're feeling it, he's not. There is a tremendous fear of rejection right from the get-go, even asking for a date, let alone once you've gone out on one or two and somebody's feeling it and the other person isn't. But I think that first, how do you tell the other person that it's not a good fit when you're not feeling the relationship after those first couple of dates? I think is a good jumping off point.
Well, when you said that, and it reminded me, last year, kind of roughly around this time, I was dating fairly prolifically. It felt like going on quite a few first dates, and I went out, perfectly lovely man, but I just knew that there wasn't anything there. He was very polite, very interested in what I had to say. We had gone out on a couple of dates, and then on that second date, he started talking about future plans, and I'm like, I feel like I'm faking it really hard to get through this date. And the fact of like, you want us to like go out. It was not like out of town, but slightly out of town to go visit this other restaurant place. And I'm like, I don't think I can do that. I am not a good enough actress to fake anything that long. And I think there's always in my head, I don't want somebody to do that to me. So I never tried to drag it out any longer than possible, trying to be very honest and upfront about one, what I was looking for, which is I was looking for a relationship. So if that was never something they were interested in, we probably didn't make it past that first date. But two, also knowing what I deserved. And I wanted somebody that I was excited about. I wanted somebody who kind of sparked something. You didn't necessarily have to be butterflies, but I knew that there had to be this certain interest. So there was a person that I was following on Instagram. And we've talked about this, I think, way back in like season 1. We were talking about scripts. And one of the best ones was always like, hey, I've had a wonderful time getting to know you. I just don't feel blank connection, whether that's a romantic connection, however you want to word that. I wish you the best of luck, and kind of keeping it short and sweet. And it was always hard for me not to want to over explain, but it was always just, hey, you're an awesome person. I love talking to you, but I just don't feel this romantic connection. I wish you the best of luck. Leaving it at that. And for the people who I've sent that to, it's always worked out really well. And I know that I'm lucky that I didn't end up with a couple of weirdos who didn't want to take no for an answer. but I think it's always that way of like we've said bazillion times now. So I hope you getting this tattooed in your brain somewhere. Clear is kind, right? You are always kinder if you communicate something. The whole, I'm not proud to admit I have ghosted a couple people because I knew it probably was worth going into that, but that's a conversation for another day. Part of our mistakes conversation, maybe. But it's about taking the time to say, hey, this is not for me. I wish you luck, and letting them go and knowing that they're not going to hold out hope, and knowing that you have let them go and let them know. Bless and release of what I've heard a couple of people say. You just like bless them with best of luck and then release them so that you're both free now to go out and find that person who's hopefully a better match for you ultimately.
Hopefully having something to say and knowing how to approach that, hey, thanks for your interest, but I'm not interested, it is helpful. So I think that's a great script. I would also like to say that if you are on the receiving end of that script, it doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with you. You are fine just the way you are. Most people are not going to be the right person to be in a relationship with. So it's about finding the right person. And the more, honestly, the more first dates you go on, the more likely you are to find the right person. So not taking offense to it if you're on the receiving end of that, but also using that to make sure that you're not just ghosting somebody, because it never feels good to be ghosted. And again, we'll go into dating mistakes. That needs to be a topic because I've done it too.
Well, it's like failure is not failure. Like it's just learning experiences. So we we have all learned a lot, I'm sure. But it's again, it's this idea that to not know for me has always been way worse than if you were just to tell me, hey, no, I'm not interested. Because then my nice little overactive brain is going to go into, well, what was it? Was it about me? Did I say that? Oh, I can't believe you said that story. And so then it becomes this narrative in your brain that I think almost hurts you for the next person you try to go out with, because then you're like overly aware. I'm like, well, I said this particular story and the guy ghosted me. So maybe that's it. Maybe I don't say. So it's always about brevity and clarity, because remember, you don't owe them a laundry list of why you think it's not going to work, because that just opens you up to hurt somebody's feelings. And I don't think that's what hopefully anybody's intending to do, is to hurt the other person's feelings, but just clearly cutting it off so that both of you can move on.
Getting into this a little bit later too, not only does it open you up to hurt somebody else's feelings if you go into a laundry list of things, or even a short list, or even a one thing list, is you're opening yourself up to negotiation. They could, if they're feeling the connection or they want the relationship to continue, and you tell them why, you are giving them an opportunity to defend themselves or to negotiate your concerns away to make the relationship go on to that next level, or go on to that next date, or go on to whatever it is, when you already know that it's not what you want. And then you end up in a situation where it's much harder to get out of. So clear is kind, but brief and precise, and you don't owe anybody an explanation.
Yes, I'm glad you brought up that whole idea of the like negotiation tactic, because I think a lot of people who are used to being manipulative and who want to get their way are going to do everything in their power to make you believe that your reason is not good enough. And I think we already have enough, probably on our own, believing that we have enough valid reasons. And seriously, if this is like 3 dates in, or even like a couple of months in, and you just are annoyed by the way they chew, that's enough of a reason to break this off. You don't need to, even to yourself, justify, well, he's not, it doesn't have to go to the end of the spectrum where he's like a jerk the whole time. It can be as simple as he doesn't listen when I talk about X, Y, or Z. It can be any reason, any number of things, like he breathes too loudly or she chews gum really annoyingly. So letting your reasons be your reasons. And unless you feel safe, I don't think I would necessarily tell a whole bunch of people, because even friends with the best of intentions, I think, can be like, seriously, because I always feel like, especially if people are coupled and they're talking to single people, and this might be my prejudice because I was single for way too long, is this idea of, we'll just hurry up and pick somebody. I pick somebody and settle down. Why can't you just pick somebody? And your bar is set too high. Your standards are too high. Your standards are your standards for a reason. Let them be as high as you want to, because I can promise you it is 3 million times better to be single and by yourself and doing things that you love than it is to be with somebody who just annoys the bejesus out of you. I mean, those are like, not that they have to be that extreme, but it's always going to be better to choose yourself and your happiness and your peace over needing to be with somebody just to be with somebody.
Speaking of that, we're not trying to talk anybody out of a relationship that you're happy in. We're not trying to talk anybody out of a relationship in general. But how do you know that they're not the one? And sometimes it's just I'm settling because I don't want to be alone. So are you settling, and what is your gut telling you? And is this really the relationship that you want to be in? And if it's not, we're empowering you to stand firm in setting your bar as high as you want it and calling off any relationship that's not right for you.
Yes, beautifully said. Thank you for like, they're not looking to bust anything up, but yeah, you will kind of know. But if not, can you have a conversation with that person? Maybe it's something that can be fixed before it ends everything, but always learning to kind of trust that gut instinct, because as much as I hate to admit it, it's usually right, right?
Just because there's nothing wrong doesn't mean it's the right relationship. And again, not trying to tell you that your relationship is wrong or that you need to leave your relationship, but there are many relationships out there where people are in the relationship because there's nothing wrong. Personal experience, well, not a personal experience, but somebody that I know very well is currently in a relationship, and I would never tell her to leave her relationship. It's her decision, but she is in a relationship right now where she's staying because he's a nice guy and he's not doing anything wrong. But you can tell that it is not the relationship that she wants for herself or that she wants to be in. So if that sounds like you, if I'm talking to you, then I'm not talking about you, but if I'm talking to you and describing your situation, then know that you're settling, and maybe take a hard look at that and decide if you want to put your bar a little higher and go after what that higher bar is, because it's okay to be single.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think there's this idea that to break up, there has to be this like reason, right? Like he cheated or he lied or she was, talking to, I say he, but it could be either sex. So that there has to be this like logical reason. But sometimes, like you said, you just know that in your gut, this is not the feeling that you were hoping for. But like you said, he's not mean, he's not rude to me, they're not they're not doing anything that classically qualifies as breakup worthy. And that can be a hard space to be in, because it feels very amorphous, right? This like blobby there's this gray area, there's no real clear cut, he cheated on me, he lied to me, he did this or she did that, and I'm like, makes it very clear. But when you don't feel, and sparks is such a overrated thing, but you feel that like passion and that excitement and that energy, when that's not there, at a certain point, you're like, oh, I hate that whole, like, it's better than nothing, because I've been there too.
Well, and I don't want to get that confused either. And so this is morphing into an episode that I didn't know that it was going to go in this direction. But as we're talking about the settling conversation, I also don't want to confuse that with a relationship that has fizzled because of lack of intimacy or lack of physical connection, because there are ways to reignite that spark and that connection and where that's at. And so if that's what's missing in your life, there are ways to bring that back into your relationship. Go back and listen to the episode that we had on sex. We talk a lot about self-love in there, and we talk a lot about sparking and bringing something different to your relationship from that perspective. But bringing some of that back to your relationship can reignite that spark or that connection or that passion that may have been there in the beginning and simmered down because life got in the way or kids got in the way or something got in the way. So listen to your gut. Your gut is never going to lead you astray, but there is something different between the I'm staying because there's nothing wrong versus the I'm in a relationship that I no longer feel passion for because we've let the relationship go and haven't worked on it.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, this kind of did take a turn that we weren't expecting, but it is really about kind of stepping back, isn't it? It's looking at that big picture. It's not this knee jerk reaction. Yes, if you're 3 dates in, by all means, pull the trigger and go. But when you're looking at like even like 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, year, something beyond that, is it something that you can have a conversation about? I mean, you could have it on date 3, a conversation. That's not what I'm saying either. But I'm like, is there something that you can communicate to your person and being like, hey, this is kind of how I'm feeling. How are you feeling? It's something that I try to do consciously with my boyfriend, not every week, but periodically we have this like, we had it not too long ago, this like check-in where I'm like, yeah, there were some things bugging me and we needed to talk about it because some things had come up and I didn't feel comfortable with where we had left them. So we have to have these conversations. So I think it's about stepping back and being like, is this a me thing that I need to do a little bit of searching on, working on, and I think it's never a bad idea to bring it to your partner and say, hey, this is where I am. This is what I'm feeling. Where are you? Because maybe they have a very different interpretation of where they are in this relationship and how the relationship looks. And if you guys aren't on the same page, then there's a lot that's not going to happen because you're not both going towards that same end goal. So being able to have those conversations that maybe aren't comfortable and that are hard. And we've referenced this book a bazillion times too, Difficult Conversations. I'll link it in the show notes. But if you can't have these difficult conversations, that should be a hint as well. If you feel like you can't bring up your concerns and talk to your partner about why you feel like you're maybe physically or emotionally or intimately disconnected, is that really what you want as well?
Yes, and disconnection again is different than settling. But I think one of the things when you're talking about that and you're checking in with that disconnection, one of the quotes that I really like is a relationship isn't 50-50. A relationship is 100-100. You both have to work at a relationship to make a relationship work, or it's going to die out. I think of all the memes that you see on social media when it's talking about friends and who deserves to be in your life and who's reciprocating effort. And there are times when somebody's going through something hard and they're not reciprocating the effort that you're putting in, or vice versa. And that happens in relationships. And recognizing those, picking up the slack, being willing to have those conversations, and being willing to continue to work on your relationship, because as much as we want relationships to be fun and easy and free, and they are, good relationships are, they are also work to stay connected, because you may not always feel like having physical contact with your partner, but I'm going to go to the love languages thing here. If your partner's love language is physical contact and you're not touching him or her sexually, I don't even mean sexually, I mean just in general, that physical contact, giving hugs, a kiss before they leave for the day, hugging before you go to bed, when you pass them in the kitchen, touching the small of their back or holding hands, those types of touches also are very important. And so that's just one example. So if you're not initiating that and you're not investing in your relationship, it's really easy for that passion to flounder and to die down a little bit and for it to feel like the spark has died. And before you give up on that, it's one of those things where if you go and you're both putting 100% effort in, that there is something that can be turned around. I had a friend a while back who went through a divorce, and I could say this friend was me because I also feel like this was talking directly to myself, but I was in a different place at the time and I was listening to her. And one of the things that she had said to me was, well, I told him if he doesn't change, this relationship is over. And in order for a relationship to survive and thrive, you both have to invest in it and you both have to try. And when you put that all on the other person to fix your relationship or to make your relationship better, it's bound for failure.
Yeah. Because as much as we hate to admit it, we bring faults and hiccups and not always the best of intentions. There's always stuff that we need to work on. And I'm glad you brought up the 100-100 that we think is supposed to be 50-50. And Brene Brown had talked about this at one point, is that sometimes her and her husband will check in and they'll be like, I'm at 80% today. So then I can give you that extra 20% from me so that we're at 100%. So it's sometimes it's about meeting your partner where like, I've only got 60% to give today. Do you have an extra 40% to help me? Or there are days where maybe you're both at 40% and nobody's going to get, you have nothing to give and they have nothing to give. So how do you handle those days where you're both just at 40% and you're going to have to figure out how to make it through? But knowing that that's kind of that like give and take, that sometimes there's that flow of like, we're not both going to be at 100% giving into this, but how can we support each other to kind of get to closer to 100%? And again, knowing that we bring some of that to the table. So is there anything that I'm doing that maybe isn't working? Is there anything that they're doing that maybe isn't working? And how do we talk about this so that at the end of the day, we both feel fulfilled in the relationship? Because hopefully that's what you're shooting for, is that both people are happy and fulfilled and want to make this work and not just sticking around because she makes a good pot roast, or he fixes X, Y, or Z. So if that works for you, then that works for you. But hopefully you want more from a relationship than just the basic things that you can do and give each other.
In a non-threatening way to ask about that, ask your partner about that without the fear of them attacking you, is instead of asking what's wrong, ask what do you need more of, or what can I provide more of in our relationship to help strengthen our relationship? What would you like to see more of? And they could say, hey, I need more physical touch. Hey, I need more help around the house. Hey, I need more help with the kids. Whatever that may be, then you're focusing on what you're doing right and what you can and how you can contribute more, instead of telling you what you're doing wrong and trying to change wrong behaviors. We're putting our focus on the right things versus on the wrong things. And that can change the dynamic of that conversation. And it's a very non-threatening way to approach that conversation with your partner to help strengthen your relationship.
Well, and that was like part of the check-in questions that we do, if not once a month, then like every other week, where I'm like, okay, what's coming up in your week? What might be difficult for you? What are you excited about? Kind of getting both sides of it. And I ask him fairly regularly, what can I do to support you? What do you need from me this week? Is it me maybe adjusting my schedule so that I'm available at a different time? Is it maybe me sending in more text? So asking what people need and support, because we're not mind readers. And we talked about this in one of our episodes too. You're like, you sometimes, as much as it might hurt you, and rom-coms have told you they should just know, we need to ask for what we need. I saw a TikTok about this the other day. You can't just say, that pasta looks really good. Man, I wish I had some of that pasta. And then the other person is just going to keep eating. No, you have to say, gosh, that smells really good. Can I have some of that pasta? You need to ask for what you want, because like 9 times out of 10, you're going to get it back. And I think all of us feel I can support you if you tell me what you need. I can't support you in the best possible way if I don't know what you ultimately need. So asking for what you need out of that is always going to serve you better than hoping that they get it from your very passive hints. And then unless you're just looking for a reason to be upset and then getting upset when they don't fulfill what you would hope that they were going to fulfill. So again, it's like meeting each other halfway. I'm like, I'm happy to support you, but you have to tell me the best way to do that so that you feel like I'm doing something, that I'm being there, that I'm helping you, and that I feel like I'm actually doing something. And hopefully that can smooth over. It's not going to solve everything, but it's a great first step to getting on the same page on how to best be there for each other.
I love that. And we are getting low on time here. We do want to keep this digestible for you, short snippets. That is, we lose 95% of what we learn anyway. So we just definitely want to keep it short so that you can absorb as much as possible. But let's say you've gone through all of that and you're sure long-term relationship, you've decided that they're not the one. What now? How do you go through that? Again, even if it's a long-term relationship, keeping what you're saying as brief as possible. You don't necessarily owe them an explanation. No matter how long you've been in a relationship, you don't owe them an explanation. If you're not happy, that's it. You say as little as possible and say, hey, I don't think this is working for me.
And to highlight too, like always, we're going to talk about the safety aspect. So yes, sometimes it's for longer term relationships who might feel better to do this in person, but we always want you to consider your safety first and foremost. So if anything feels volatile, a phone call or a text, doing what feels safe for you, not necessarily a cop out. Maybe it is, and that can be up to you and your internal process, but doing always what is safe for you. So if that's a phone call or a text instead of in person, you can still communicate the same thoughts, being like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I don't feel like this is going anywhere, but making sure that you are staying safe regardless of how you decide to end things.
Right. Being respectful. So if it's a longer term relationship where it's not volatile, in person is best, right?